Hello, I'm glad you're joining me for a recap of our last Bible study. We began taking a look at the parable in Mark chapter 4 about the sower and Jesus's explanation and how that may have been a surprise to the people of the first century when they were first hearing that. But in the midst of that is the reasons for Jesus telling stories in parables. He says in verse 11, He told them, The secret of the kingdom of God has been given to you, but those on the outside, everything is said in parables, and that they may be ever seeing but not perceiving. We talked about the meaning of that. First of all, that the parables have a secret of the kingdom of God. What is that secret? Well, you examine each parable. It is a good ethic, a good moral story, but there's something else going on. And as we took a look at some of the parables last week, we began to see some of those secrets by just understanding the history, who is present when Jesus is telling those parables, and also understanding a little bit about the culture of the day. So we're going to now turn to Luke chapter 14, which is one of them where we began. So also, we talked about the motif of the inside and outsiders. There's a secret of the kingdom of God. There are those on the inside, insiders, who may understand what the parables are saying. Hopefully, we are insiders now. And those on the outside, which are the Pharisees. They think they're the insiders, but they're actually on the outside. And we took a look at the first parable where the thief binds up the strong man. And surrounding that parable in Mark chapter 3 are verses about Jesus's associates or mothers and brothers being on the outside and Jesus being inside the house and them not understanding, the family not understanding, but calling Jesus actually out of his mind. And those on the inside, he says, Who are my mother and my brothers but these that are around me, these that are following me? So that gives you that indication, that motif that there's an insider group and an outsider group, those that are left on the outside. And again, when he tells about the secret of the kingdom of God, he said, but those on the outside will not understand. And you could see that in Mark chapter 4. So here we are in Luke chapter 14. We talked about the great banquet. And this is told at the Pharisee's house. And in the great banquet, there's many guests invited to this banquet, but they have ridiculous excuses as why not to come. And then Jesus says, Go out and compel those by the highways, those on the outside. What we would normally think are outsiders. He says, Go get the poor, go get the lame, go get the blind, and then go on out to the highways. The poor, the lame, and the blind were thought to be sinners in that day, and they weren't allowed in the temple. But here Jesus is telling this great banquet story and inviting them in. Following that, we talked about the parable of the lost sheep. And in the parable of the lost sheep, which is a simple story of Jesus going to find a sheep that was separated from this flock of 100. And he says to the Pharisees, Well, which one of you would not go and get a sheep that is lost? Well, the truth is that the Pharisees didn't go after the lost sheep. And that is brought out in the Old Testament by God in Ezekiel chapter 34. He says, Prophesy to the shepherds and say to them that you have not brought back the strays or searched for the lost, but you keep yourself well fed. And he says, verse 11, and throughout this chapter of Ezekiel 34, I myself will search for my sheep and look after them. after them. Now, Jesus tells this parable, and certainly the Pharisees that are hearing it would know that this is in reference to Ezekiel 34 and is the secret that Jesus is telling them. And I believe it is. Right there, he is saying, I am the one who will come. I am God, and I have come to rescue the lost. In that audience as well are the tax collectors and the sinners, and they might understand he means me. God has come to rescue me. Two great parables that go hand in hand, the great banquet and this lost sheep, to say that it is God who has come to rescue us. Jesus is our rescuer. All right. And let me just say that the assignment for next week, or for now this week, would be to continue in Luke chapter 15. Read through the end of that chapter, the parable of the lost coins, the parable of the prodigal son, and see who's on the inside, who's on the outside in those. Does the motif continue of insiders and outsiders? And you might want to look at John chapter 10 as well. And we'll discuss a couple of other parables as well. But that is the assignment for next week. And we will see you then.